In the previous episode, we saw when and how New Guinea was discovered and also how the bond between the Netherlands and New Guinea developed. In this episode, the island gets more attention from the Netherlands and also from other Western powers. The North Moluccan Archipelago was the hub of the spice trade in Southeast Asia. Here the Spanish, Portuguese, English and Dutch fought for the monopoly of the spice trade. The Spaniards fought the Portuguese, the VOC fought the English, and the islands of Tidor and Ternate fought each other. During nearly 200 years of the VOC's existence, about 4,700 ships were equipped to Asia, including nearly 1,700 in the 17th and more than 3,000 in the 18th century. The sultanates, that are little kingdoms, Tidor and Ternate had lived in discord for centuries. During the Spice War, Tidor entered into an alliance with the Portuguese and Ternate with first the Spanish and then the VOC. In 1605, fierce fighting took place between the VOC with the support of the people of Ternate on the one hand and the Portuguese who ruled the island of Tidor on the other. It was the last defeat of the Portuguese in the Moluccas. They surrendered to the VOC. And in 1663, the Spanish and Portuguese left Southeast Asia altogether. Their role in the spice trade was over. As a result, the VOC became one of the richest and most powerful organizations in the world. For 2 centuries, this company would have a monopoly on overseas trade between the Republic and Asia and within Asia. The successful trade contributed to the Golden Age. The islet of Tidor conquered by the VOC is an important factor in the history of New Guinea, which is why we draw our attention to it. It lies next to the islet of Ternate to the west of the large island of Halmahera. Tidor, through the trade in spices, became very influential. The sultans of this island claimed sovereignty over New Guinea in the surrounding islands. So these areas were under the sultan's sphere of influence. See the orange area on the map. In 1606, Willem Jens sailed on the Dutch VOC ship, Duifk, along the west and south coasts of New Guinea. He never set foot on the island. 10 years later, in 1616, Schouten and Le Maire sailed along the entire north coast and mapped the islands that were later named after Schouten. The Schouten Islands. Around 1660 the VOC supported the Sultan of Tidor in his struggle against the Portuguese, and after they left the Moluccas concluded a treaty with the Sultan, recognizing her authority over the Papuans, the people of New Guinea, as a protectorate. The Dutch now had complete monopoly over New Guinea and began researching through expeditions to explore and claim the island for the Netherlands. They also wanted to see how the island could be colonized. Thus, expeditions were sent to the north and south of the island with the aim of exploring what minerals could be extracted. At that time, people hoped to find coal, iron and gold there. In 1623, Jan Karstens left Ambon for New Guinea heading east. He encountered the southwest coast of the island. In his ship's journal, he reported on snowy peaks of a high mountain range. Abel Tasman was a Dutch explorer and had sailed past New Guinea twice on his voyages. On his first expedition voyage in 1642, he sailed through the southern hemisphere toward Australia and then discovered Tasmania and New Zealand, and on the way back to Batavia he sailed along the northern coast of New Guinea. On a second expedition voyage in 1644 to New Holland, present-day Australia, he sailed from Batavia along the southern coast of New Guinea. While bartering, the Papuas proved uninterested in his trade. The VOC was not happy with the results of his expeditions. On both voyages along New Guinea, he had never set foot on land for research. The VOC, his client, was not happy about that. The VOC was told by other sailors that the English were planning to claim New Guinea or parts of it for their king. It was said that many English ships were sailing off the coast and that rumor alarmed the VOC. So they wanted to investigate that as well. The VOC expeditions were usually equipped with several ships accompanied by a corvette for protection against pirates and other enemy ships. At first the VOC had little interest in New Guinea, the country had no products to trade in. But since the English were interested, they decided to explore the island anyway. As its first action, on July 31, 1678, the VOC sent Johannes Cates to New Guinea, and he was the first to plant the Dutch flag on the island, on the western tip of Annan Peninsula, northwest of Fakfak. In the process, he also passed through the Raja Ampat Islands. These vistas in the Fakfak area must have been seen by the seafarers of Keyes' expedition from their ship during their expedition voyage. Johannes Cates also visited Arguni Bay during a geographical and commercial exploration trip. But this discovery was kept secret by the VOC for trade policy reasons. It was in 1705 that the VOC sent an expedition of 3 ships to the northern coast of New Guinea under the leadership of Dutch explorer Jacob Wayland. He discovered Geelvink Bay. The bay was named after his frigate, the Yellowfinch. Here it was discovered that the locals recognized the Sultan of Tidor as monarch and paid tribute to him. This view Jacob Wydland had from his 3 ships, and the beauty of the bay and the mountainous country beyond made a great impression on Wayland and the crew. The VOC's assignment to Wayland was to investigate whether the English gained a foothold on New Guinea to which they could lay claim, and also to make accurate maps of the outside of the island. Captain Thomas Forrest was an explorer in the service of the English East Indian Company and led an exploratory mission toward New Guinea from 1774 to 1776 to locate possible sources of spices and conduct reconnaissance work. He explored Yellowfin Bay and, among other things, surveyed Waigeo, of which he had the first good map. Forrest reached Dorii Harbor and returned to Aceh in March 1776. He traveled by single boat and his trip lasted 15 months. This bay was given to the English by the Sultan of Ternate in exchange for support for his opposition to the VOC, because the bay was in the part of New Guinea that was within his sphere of influence. He goes ashore in the region inhabited by the Asmat Papuans. When his crew took a walk along the sea beach but had not gone above 200 yards before they were attacked by 3 or 4 men who came out of the woods a little before them. But upon their immediately firing upon them they retired. The crew returned to the boat, but were followed by 60 or as some thought about 100 of the natives who had advanced in small parties out of the woods. Their arms were ordinary darts about 4 feet long made of a kind of reed and pointed at one end with hard wood. Cook immediately raised his anchor, left this hostile environment and continued his voyage to Batavia. In that period Batavia was known for its outbreaks of malaria. And many in Cook's company succumbed to the disease and other ailments such as dysentery. Cook sailed back to the United Kingdom via Batavia and around the Cape of Good Hope. On July 12, 1771, he arrived at Dover. Sultan Nuku, also known as Prince Nuku and one of the most famous Tidore sultans, rebelled against VOC colonization in 1780. He fled to western New Guinea and settled on the Raja Ampat Islands. During his revolt he called himself Sultan of Tidore and Papua, and together with Papuas he fought against the VOC. The Sultan's rebellion against the VOC lasted from 1780 to 1810. Here he received support from the English East India Company and the Papuas. After the defeat of Prince Nuku in 1786, much of its territory, including the western part of New Guinea, came under Dutch rule, as part of the Dutch East Indies. The VOC had no operational activities in the East Indies after 1784. In 1799, the VOC went bankrupt. The adventure of the world's largest trading company was over forever. Although New Guinea belonged to the Netherlands since 1786, no attempt was made to do anything in New Guinea. This was because the VOC was no longer operational. The English took this opportunity to explore and possibly colonize the island. John Hayes, a British lieutenant, heard from John McClure, a colleague of his, that there was a lot of nutmeg on New Guinea and 2 years later went to the northwest of the Bird's Head. Between January 1791 and January 1793, he examined the Palau Islands, the Sulu Archipelago, and a great part of the coast of New Guinea. He also discovered a deep inlet on the western end of New Guinea which was afterwards named McClure Gulf in his honor. Hayes was disappointed because he could not find nutmeg or any other spice. Despite his search over much of the south coast, he therefore decided to go to the north coast to continue his search. On February 6, 1793, the Duke of Clarence, 250 tons, and the Duchess of Bengal, 100 tons, left India. Because of adverse winds, Hayes could not sail direct to New Guinea, so he decided to voyage round New Holland. English Captain John Hayes entered Dore Bay on September 1793 and planted the English flag there on behalf of the King of Great Britain. It was a first attempt to colonize New Guinea. He founded a small village and named it New Albion, present-day Manokwari. Hayes's landing at Dore Bay seems to have been purely a lucky accident. Hayes anchored and decided to remain in the harbor of the bay, which he called Restoration Bay, for they were not only restored to health, but to apparent affluence from the richness of the country. Restoration Bay completely landlocked from all winds and dangers of the sea. A formal proclamation describing the annexed territory was read aloud. It was signed by John Hayes, his 3 non-commissioned officers and 20 crew members from the 2 ships under his command. This began the first European presence on the large island of New Guinea. On the island of Mansinam off the coast of Manokwari, Captain Hayes built a settlement which he named Fort Coronation. The captain was very impressed and charmed by the beauty of Dore Bay. However, he had to leave for a while to get supplies. Upon his return, he found the fort deserted. Sultan Nuku of Tidore disagreed with the situation and stoked the Papuans to attack the fort. The fort's escaping crew remained on one of his ships until his return. Two years later, in April 1795, New Albion was abandoned because of disease and constant hostile attacks by the Papuas. Dore Bay had thus effectively been in English hands for 2 years. After this failed expedition, Captain Hayes went down in history as the forgotten mariner. The attitude of the company by whom he was employed to his voyage pained Hayes, but he remained in its employ until his death at the Cocos Islands, on July 3, 1831. Dumont d'Urville was a French explorer, naval officer and rear admiral, who explored the South and Western Pacific and in particular New Guinea. He explored the northern coast of the island. After French explorer Dumont's journey in 1823 to find birds of paradise on the Raja Ampat and the Bird's Head. These birds were intensively hunted, making them rare. In fact, they were very popular in the French fashion world and especially on women's hats. On the island of Waigeo he saw this bird of paradise, among others. D'Urville was a world traveler, but found New Guinea to be one of the most beautiful places. He arrived in Yellowfin Bay and stayed with the missionaries at Mansinam. From here he went into the Arfak Mountains to hunt for his zoological collection. The operation was very tough because of the impenetrable jungle, the many rains, but he knew from his previous expedition that the biodiversity of animals is very high. D'Urville loved walking through tropical forests and observing the birds. New Guinea was a true paradise for him. That's why this is his second visit to the island. Unfortunately, he could not stay long in the mountains due to lack of helpers and heavy rains during his research. In Bird Head, D'Urville conducted research in the Arctic Mountains. He collected data on birds, butterflies and fauna. Throughout his trip, he collected a total of some 1,600 plant species, 900 stone species and information about the different languages spoken on the islands. After his research in the Arctic Mountains, D'Urville left for the Raja Ampat Islands. Here, too, the diversity of birds is very high and he was able to expand his zoological collection considerably. He sailed from island to island, enjoying both the forests, the wildlife and the turquoise-colored waters of the sea. Especially the dancing birds of paradise attracted his greatest attention. D'Urville was also the one who divided the Pacific into Polynesia, Melanesia, Micronesia and Malaysia. He assigned New Guinea to Melanesia. Cape D'Urville, on the east side of Yellowfinch Bay, was named after him. In 1825, he traveled back to France where he and his entire family died in a train disaster in 1842. England and the Netherlands agreed in 1824 that the western part of the island would officially belong to the Dutch East Indies. England would then get the eastern part of the island. The official border was not yet drawn. That did not happen until many years later. And with this division of the island of New Guinea, we have come to the end of this episode and I hope you enjoyed watching this video. If you subscribe to my YouTube channel, I will keep you updated on my new productions. Sharing is always allowed. I look forward to seeing you in the next episode called Missionaries of the Light.